done different things for me, a wedding and Perfect Couple, and I just thought he was a perfect Wimpy.
Rough House, a genuine hamburger for the gentleman. I'm buying.
Hey, thanks. Who's paying?
I'm buying, he's paying.
Because I was a property master, he was my favorite actor. He took care of his props. You never had to check, if he was smoking a cigarette, see if it was the right length, or the glass was filled perfectly.
One hamburger, Chisler's tacos.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Hi, Paul.
I like your background.
Well, thank you so much. And Paul, I have to start off right away. I am a lifelong fan of yours. I'm Generation X, so I've just loved everything you've done, and especially
I'm Generation Z.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I'm a bit older than you are.
Well, I was 13 when I saw Popeye in the theater, and I saw it multiple times. I was obsessed with it, and even back then, you could write to the studios, and I got here's my original Popeye press kit,
Mm-hmm.
and I got still in my collection the photos that came with it.
I have that photo. I have about 50 pictures from that. I got production stills. A lot of times movies won't give pictures to actors, especially if you have small parts. Bob would let you have any picture you wanted.
Oh.
You looked through the book and you made your request, and I came home with 50 pictures, and many of just Sweet Haven.
Oh, well, the movie's famous for so many production problems, but working with Altman and Evans, talk about an intimidating pair, but you've been close friends. You were with Robert Altman, weren't you, for a long time?
Well, I did 5 movies over time. Wedding and Perfect Couple and Health and Popeye and another OC and Stiggs, it was called. So we did become very close, and I became part of a stock company. And I knew when I went to work, I said to a friend of mine, if I don't do something wrong, I may be in more than one Robert Altman picture, because I knew he liked to use actors that he liked or worked well with over and over to make a set happier. And the sets were happier. Everybody loved working with them.
Well, Robin Williams was known for his improv, and I heard that he clashed with Robert Altman because, he just didn't do it a traditional style.
Well, the truth is, he didn't clash with Altman too much. Jules Pfeiffer, the cartoonist, made the screenplay from the comic strip. He was a lifelong fan, as I was. I was a boy cartoonist, and I remember reading Popeye. And Jules came to him and said, Bob, Robin sometimes says what I wrote, but often he doesn't say so. He says something on his own. Sometimes it's funny, but it doesn't always fit. So will you tell him to stop that? And Bob said, no, I'm not going to tell him what to do. So after a couple of weeks, he left the island. He had been there 3 months, but he said, I'm not helpful here. They're not paying any attention to me. Bob preferred to make his actors happier than any writer, including his own writing. So that's what happened there.
Was it true that Dustin Hoffman was considered for the role of Popeye at one time?
Yes, with Lily Tomlin as Olive. That was one of the first choices. But then there was disagreements between Pfeiffer, the author, and Dustin, and Bob Evans, the producer, went with the writer. He said, okay, goodbye, Dustin. And I think Robin was a much better choice.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
What Altman told me about Wimpy is, he said, I don't want other people were trying for the role. They heard about it. Buddy Hackett, Dom DeLuise. And he said, I don't want people watching the movie and saying, when Wimpy comes on the stage, I don't want people to say, oh, there's Buddy Hackett, or there's Dom DeLuise. They want it to be a blank screen, a blank slate. So even though you've been in films, you're not as famous as those people in a way. So you'll be beginning from scratch. Be us approaching it fresh. And that's what he felt about a lot of things. He would have probably had a lot of trouble with Dustin, who is not always easy to work with, I've heard.
And so, you sang the songs live during filming. Was that unusual?
What's that? What was the question?
You sang the songs for Popeye live. They weren't recorded in a studio and you kind of lip sync to them. He wanted to have them on set.
In the playback in the ear.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was sang it. It was cut out of the movie, but I found out just today where I can get a hold of that song that's somewhere available, a Wimpy song that was cut. Yeah, we did sing it live with the earwig, they called it, to a playback.
And the set of Sweet Haven still exists in Malta, doesn't it? It's called Popeye Village?
Popeye Land.
Popeye Land.
And it was very distressed looking, like 100-year-old whaling village when it was created. But then now that it's a tourist attraction, it's probably got bright colors and gift stands and hot dog stands and ice cream stands and all that.
Well, it's a legacy. It still exists. You must be happy about that.
Yeah. I am, but I'm not going back there because it would be desecrated for me to see it have bright colors, because in my mind it's still the old real Sweet Haven, and it would cost more to tear it down for Altman and the company than to give it to Malta.
You know, the great Richard Libertini. I'm such a fan of his. Do you have a fond memory of him?
I got him that job. He's a friend of mine for improvisation. And his partner used to be in a comedy team with a guy named McIntyre Dixon. And I told Altman he should use Libertini as Giesel, the pushcart vendor. He had a long beard. He could do dialects. An old friend of mine from improvisation. And McIntyre played Olive Oil's father, Coal Oil. And a good friend of mine played Castor Oil, Olive's brother, Donovan Scott, a wonderful comedic actor. But I was rarely able to help other actors get jobs, but Altman did let me recommend those two, and they worked in the film.
I also found Bill Irwin and his physical comedy so fascinating, and Popeye's where I saw him first.
Yeah, in the comic strip, his name was Ham Gravy. Comics was never called Popeye originally; it was called Thimble Theater, and then later it said starring Olive Oil. And it was about Olive Oil and her family and her friends. And Ham Gravy was one of her boyfriends. Bill Irwin played that part. Then Popeye came in as a one-shot, and he didn't look anything like Popeye. He was tall and thin with one eye closed. But the public began to ask for him, and he became like the Fonz, and he took over the strip. Then it was called Thimble Theater with Popeye and Olive, then finally Popeye. And his face got fatter. His cheeks got bigger, his arms got bigger. All that happened after he started over time as it became more and more popular. He took over the comic strip.
And Paul, in our final moments here, I had to tell you how much I loved the movie Strange Brew growing up. And here's one of my favorite things. I have one of the soundtrack album signed by Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis. I interviewed them at the Brother Bear Junket in Florida for the Disney film. And they told me that the album is very rare, but I just love you in this movie. You steal just about every scene you're in. And that's hard to do against these two and Max von Sydow.
If you can send it to me, I'll sign it for you.
Oh, I'll do that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you get my address from the guys at Paramount.
Oh, that would be great. And
yeah,
my
favorite line in the movie is I say to the judge, you'll notice that we were able to videotape these people, and it was myself and Max von Sydow pretending to be Dave and Rick.
Yeah.
And he's like 6'4", could never be them. And he said, and it also has a time code. And the judge says, for the jury, what is the time code? I said, just because I don't know doesn't mean I'm lying.
You also said, which I understand are really hard to fake.
Yeah, they're really hard to fake.
Oh, yes. And I'd like to point out that this tape has not been tampered with or edited in any way. It even has a time code on it, and those are very difficult to fake.
For the benefit of the court, would you please explain time code?
Just because I don't know what it is doesn't mean I'm lying.
My favorite line with you in
Strange Brew. Those guys wrote that. It was great writing.
My favorite line in Strange Brew is when it's just a weird moment, you're driving and you're like, it's nice to get out of the factory and take a drive, you know? And you're like, want me to put your seat back? I mean, just, you were such a great assistant that he didn't appreciate. So I thought that was really great.
Yeah, I love working with those guys. Of course, I'm an improviser too, and I worked at Second City, and so we're all colleagues. And,
well, in our final moments here, Paul, I've been a film critic now for 25 years, and wow. I do a lot of, did the junkets. I stayed at the Waldorf Astoria so many times, And there's not one time that I didn't check into the Waldorf where I didn't think of you from the Out-of-Towners. You know, they've changed it around now. You know, I think they even sold the hotel. It's something else now. But I couldn't believe, you know, I was trying to figure out exactly where you were. Now they changed it since the movie, but I always thought of you when I checked into the Waldorf.
Now, can I help you, sir?
Yes, my name is George Kellerman.
Oh,
I've
yes,
got a-
Mr. Kellerman. One moment, please.
Oh, don't tell me one moment, please. I don't have one moment. I was told to come here this morning, and if I don't get the room,
We
I...
have your room, Mr. Kellerman, suite 927. I was just getting a message that was left for you.
Oh.
Things certainly have eased up since the transit strike was settled. Here we are. Your luggage arrived from the airport and was sent up to your room.
I worked one night. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
I can't believe he knows Out of Towners.
Yeah. Oh, and also, we haven't talked about Breaking Away, but this is about Popeye.
Yeah.
I know if you're a film critic, that's a favorite movie.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And the best movie I ever made.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Brilliant film.
And you know, the author won the Oscar for that script,
Absolutely.
Steve Tessich.
And finally today, I was reading through your biography. You wrote Easy Reader and Fargo North sketches for the Electric Company. I mean, I watched those first run, Paul. And when I ran into Morgan Freeman, the first time I ever interviewed him, I said, "You taught me how to read." He goes, "You owe me money."
I wrote all those characters, and I was the head writer, and I created almost all the characters. Many of them kept continuing. I left after the first year, but I created all those characters, and they were a lot of interesting characters.
Oh yeah, Skip.
I did a thing called Love of Chair, which is a running thing, it was on every day. I did a thing called The Last Word that was on every day. Fargo North, Decoder.
Skip
And
Tennant.
Easy Reader was Easy Writer. They all
Yeah,
had antecedents. I did Child Chef, Julia Grown Up.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
all that
great.
stuff. That
All
was
that
all
stuff.
my stuff.
Well, it's just been a total thrill, Paul. And thank you so much. From 16 Candles to the Out-of-Towners. I mean, you just have such a wonderful career. And you're one of those actors that have been with me since my childhood that I've always known. So this has been a total thrill to speak to you today for Popeye's 40th anniversary.
Well, thank you. And it's great talking to you.
Absolutely. Take care,
Okay.
Paul.